in this CodePen we created, I can take that same photo of the person incorrectly wearing a mask, and sure enough, it works. Incorrectly wearing a mask. Take another one, not wearing a mask. Welcome to Machine Learning with Nyckel. Today we're going to do image classification using machine learning and JavaScript. We're going to build a web app to look at a photo of a person and determine whether or not that photo is of a person wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, or incorrectly wearing a mask. So let's start with a blank CodePen here, and we'll start with our HTML. I'm just going to paste it in. And so you can see up here we have a script file where we're including our jQuery. And then in our main container here, we have a title tag that says, are you wearing a mask? And then there's a div, that's an upload area. This is just where we're going to drop the image file to check whether it's of a person wearing a mask or not. And then there's the actual input file there. So you can see it's pretty ugly right now. So let's do the CSS. This isn't really about CSS, so I'm just going to drop it in to make it look a little bit nicer. And there you go. We've got a nice big drop area for the image. And now let's jump into the JavaScript. So this first section is basically all jQuery boilerplate stuff that just makes the drag and drop work. So you can see there's all these drag and drop stuff. If you want to look at it more closely, I'm including the CodePen link in the description of this video. Next, we have a couple little helper functions. This first one says show image. So when the image is uploaded, it just basically looks at the file that's in that file tag, and then sets the background image of this div right here to the image we uploaded, just a way to see the image that we uploaded. And then we have this, which says resize and upload image. So basically this just resizes the image to maximum 600 by 600 pixels, so we're not uploading massively big files over the internet. And then it calls this function down here, which says check image with Nyckel, which we're going to write that in a sec. Then we have a couple more helper functions here. This is just data URL to blob, which basically takes that file and saves it as a data blob so that we can upload it. And then down here it says display result, which this basically just takes the response. You can see the response from that function we're going to write up here, and then saves it as this title tag up here. So once we upload the photo, it's going to change this to say whether or not that person is wearing a mask. One last little helper function here. Reset page, that basically just cleans everything up so we can upload another photo afterwards. And then basically the function that does the work is check image with Nyckel. So you can see we create a form data here. This is so we can do an API post using Ajax. You can see it says put URL here because we don't have a URL yet, but does a post with that image file we've uploaded there. And then on success, it calls that display result function from above. And if there's an error, it's just going to do an alert. So basically, this just takes the file, sends it to this URL to check whether or not that person is wearing a mask or not, or incorrectly wearing a mask, and then shows the result or fails. And so let's try to see what happens right now if we show a person wearing a mask incorrectly. So it's checking, and it says error checking image, which is what we expect because it's posting to a non-existent URL here. So let's go create that URL. So we head over to Nyckel and click login. So now we're going to write that function with an API endpoint to determine whether a photo is of a person wearing a mask. So I'm going to click new function, click image, not wearing a mask, incorrectly wearing a mask. So our input type is images, that's what we're looking at, and then these are the three different outputs that we want to determine between. So we can upload one image at a time, or we can even upload a couple images at a time. So you can see this is two people not wearing a mask, so I click import. And then I can label the data inside of Nyckel. So I can say this person's not wearing a mask, not wearing a mask. So now you can see we have two data points of people not wearing a mask. But it says, up here there's a little warning, it says, provide the desired output for 28 inputs, which means we need 30 total inputs for Nyckel to make a good starter model on determining whether or not a person is wearing a mask. So let's click add data. And we're going to upload a bunch this time. So you can see these are all people not wearing a mask. So I'm going to click not wearing a mask. And we can scroll through and see these are all people not wearing a mask. Click input. And now Nyckel's going to automatically annotate those for us in bulk, and you can see this is going up. While it's doing that, we can grab a bunch of images of people wearing a mask. So you can see these are all people wearing a mask. So I can assign wearing a mask import. And then let's do our final label. Actually, you can see right here, it says we still need 3 cases where the desired output is incorrectly wearing a mask because Nyckel can't create the model until it has examples of all 3 outputs. So I'll drag all these images incorrectly wearing a mask. So you can see they're sometimes comically incorrectly wearing a mask in these examples, even one comic there. And I'll say incorrectly wearing a mask, click import. Now Nyckel is processing all that data. And soon, once it has enough data, it's going to start training our very first model based on these data points. So it has 64 different images there. And now this little spinner means that Nyckel is training its first image. Just that fast, it's done. Sorry, not training its first image, training its first model. It can finish before I can even finish. So you can see it's 92%, has 92% accuracy based on cross-validation of the data that we provided. So we can look into that a little bit more. So if I look at the data, you can see these tags over here are what Nyckel predicted. So you can see it predicted this person wearing a mask with 94% confidence. And indeed, we labeled that wearing a mask because that person is wearing a mask. It's not just looking at the label of, or the annotation of this photo. It's basically doing cross-validation by looking at the rest of the photos, saying, hey, based on the rest of the images that you labeled, can we guess this one? And it does indeed guess it correctly with 94% confidence. If we want to see this red section there, the ones that Nyckel is basically getting wrong, we can say, hey, just show me where the function output is disagreeing with the desired output. So you can see Nyckel guessed with 81% confidence that this person is wearing a mask and got it wrong because that person's incorrectly wearing a mask, although it's kind of close with the nose. Again, this one got wrong. If we scroll down, we see this person is not wearing a mask, and Nyckel predicted not wearing a mask with 99% confidence. So in fact, the label's wrong. So I put that in there on purpose just to show you how this works. So we can, if we click not wearing a mask, so note over here, the accuracy is currently 92%. If I click not wearing a mask, the accuracy jumps up to 93%. So you can see it's still getting a few wrong. It's kind of confusing wearing a mask with incorrectly wearing a mask on just a few of the 64 images, but that's pretty good for just 64 data points. If we wanted to get this more accurate, we'd basically upload a bunch more photos of people wearing and incorrectly wearing masks to try to get Nyckel to be more accurate on kind of these edge cases like this. Now we can go over to invoke, and now I can drag a photo of a person that Nyckel has never seen before. So this was not in our training data. This is a new person. You can see incorrectly wearing a mask. I click invoke, and you can see indeed incorrectly wearing a mask. So now can we integrate this function into our web app we are creating? So I go over here and click API. Actually, one thing I'm going to do first is I'm going to change this. So you can see in our settings here, I'm going to say allow anyone to call this function without authentication. I'm going to choose that and click save. That way, I don't need to worry about doing authentication for the purpose of this video. But then I go over to API. You can see I have a post API to invoke a function that's right here. So I'm going to grab that full URL from right here, from the curl request. And then we can go back to our CodePen. And so this put URL here, I'll put it there. And so now instead of posting to nothing, we're going to post to that function we just created. And so now, in this CodePen we created, I can take that same photo of the person incorrectly wearing a mask, and sure enough, it works, incorrectly wearing a mask. Take another one, not wearing a mask. So there it is. We just created a web app using JavaScript and Nyckel to check photos to determine whether or not those people are wearing a mask using image classification and machine learning. Thanks. Join me next time for more examples of machine learning with Nyckel.